This week on the United Rugby Rewind, Ireland get back to winning ways against Argentina, South Africa grind out a win in London, Scotland see off Portugal, Italy get a scare against Georgia, and Wales are humbled by Australia. This is the only podcast with voices from all URC conferences. Let's start the show. Welcome to the podcast. I am joined by the Rugby ABC as usual, Ben, Alan, and Caelan.
All right,
Good
guys.
evening.
Caelan does say good evening, but unfortunately he's left himself on mute.
Apologies, I'm here.
So tons of rugby to discuss this week. A reminder to people who are new to us that we only discuss the URC nations, so the amazing match between New Zealand and France is out of our scope, unfortunately. But it does mean for the first time this autumn we do get to talk about England because South Africa played England, and we have things to say about them. So we'll just kick straight on with the first game. One of us will be stress eating cocktail sausages during this podcast to get through it. One of us, me or the packet of cocktail sausages, will not make it to the end of the podcast. Stay tuned to see which. But in the meantime, we'll begin at the beginning, which was with Ireland hosting Argentina in probably still is my favorite game of the autumn so far. Caelan, you've podded about it probably 3 times already. Give us a summary of what you've learned.
What I've learned. I still stand by my instant reaction video, which for people who don't follow us on TikTok, you can find a rap pod over on TikTok. I
That's
still stand by
1,000
it.
views last week. 1,000
nice.
followers even.
Nice. That is good. On the up with terrific on the whistle content. But look, I think Ireland were brilliant for half an hour and poor for 50. We will get into it. We have different opinions among the 4 of us about Ireland's standards. My opinion is that we either treat Ireland like one of the top teams in the world and we hold them to a higher standard, or we don't. And ultimately, I don't think the performance we've seen from Ireland, basically across the 23, bar about 4 or 5 players, was good enough. Like the pack, the front 5 forwards, including the subs, had something like 30 or 40 carries for 36 meters made. That's not enough. You're not winning your collisions. Line out was better. Don't get me wrong. It was much better. Scrum better, but again, wasn't really a big scrummaging night. I thought, as a whole, did Ireland get going? Not really. They had flashes. They scored a lovely try, which was the McCarthy one, I think, which came off the half break. I can't remember which one was which, or the handsome one actually was a really nice try. True, nice sleight of hands, and it's just that weird place that I think Ireland are in now, where they look to be finishing games slowly, which I think is not great. Like, they were a team who typically, they mightn't race through a second half, but they were at least, steady or keep up the same tempo. They seem to be weaning off in the second half these days. Attack looks a little bit stale. A lot of criticism is going down the way of Jack Crowley, which is typical here in Ireland. I don't understand. Well, I do understand it, but that's for the off the record chat. But ultimately, did Gibson Park have his best game?
It means
No.
it's an anti-Munster agenda. That's what he's saying.
No, it's not an agenda. It's not an agenda. It's the fact that
Conspiracy?
talking heads. No, it's the fact that the worst Scotland coach of all time is one of the pundits on Irish television. So, that's really not a great place to start from. Anyways, enough about that. I thought
Can't come back to that.
Yeah. Crowley did well. Gibson Park Gibson Park's the second best 9 in the world. Did he have his best game? I don't think he did. But okay, that's a different conversation. We get into that.
Cam Roigard is good.
Roigard is good. I love Cam Roigard.
Who you put at number 1? Grant Williams?
No, Dupont.
He's good as
Dupont.
well.
Obviously Dupont.
I thought
I'm just
Dupont
trying to
was a fly
disagree with
half.
you. I'm disagreeing agreeably.
Have
I
you
thought Dupont
never
was an
heard
outside
me speak?
centre.
I thought Dupont was, just a utility back now, isn't he? The way he's
Dupont and
playing.
10. Dupont the hooker. No.
Seventh player.
Jesus Christ. Gibson Park, I don't think played well by his standards. I don't think Doris has played well in the last 2 games by his standards. The same goes for Tyke Byrne, for Joe McCarthy, for James Ryan, for Andrew Porter. And to be fair, I actually think Ireland's 2 centres, Henshaw and Ringrose, had really good games. But ultimately, in the 160 minutes of rugby that we've seen, Josh van der Flier has been Ireland's best player. I don't think anyone else can say they've had a good 160 minutes. And that's the kind of frustration for me, because I even went back and like I've had a few comments online being like, you're so critical, like they're not a bad team. And Andy Farrell's right. You don't become, and from Hugh as well, you don't become a bad team overnight. But I went back to the England game just to make sure I was consistent on this. And this is how petty I am. I went back to my review of the England game from back in March. And I did say I felt like the little bits of Ireland's poor performances were always interconnected. It was usually scrum and or line out, slower ruck speed, losing the physical collisions. And to be fair, at the time it was defence. The defence is cleaned up. It's now the attack is starting to get a little bit stale. Maybe as players age on, I think the bigger reason is Ireland's attacking system is no longer fit for purpose. Not as in throw it all out, but because we don't have a 36-year-old geriatric 10 anymore. We don't need to play like we do. We need to build around the strengths of the different 10s that we have, which is guys who have got 80 minutes in their legs, and then, you know, and they're not falling apart physically. So was it perfect? No. Was it a win? Yes, a win is important. But there is definitely a sense in Ireland at the moment that, like, we haven't seen rotation, we haven't played well. A lot of people don't really care about the summer tests. Like, genuinely, they're not on TV here, really. They're on Sky. Not everyone has Sky. Like, it was at the end of a long season. All the provinces had bombed out at that stage. So, and Andy Farrell's comments about we don't have depth in Ireland pissed a lot of people off. Like, and rightly so, because in the last 3 years, I think it is, each of the 4 provinces have made a URC semi-final. We have depth. We're just not playing them. So if you're going to not play well, are you going to prefer to not play well with, you know, it's Chukwu, Osborne, Crowley, you know, Casey, whoever else, Joe McCarthy, or with your Hendersons, your O'Mahonys, your Keane Healy's, and credit to Keane Healy, Ireland's joint most capped player of all time. What a career, what a servant. I have to get that in there because he's an absolute legend. But I think that's where the frustration is really coming from Ireland fans, because it's the same team that we've seen for about 3 years. And like, Father Time catches up to everyone. Every single team we've ever seen, it will catch up to eventually. And it does look like it's catching up to Ireland.
Yeah. Alan, what was your take on the game? Obviously, as South Africa being a big rival of Ireland now, or Ireland being a big rival of South Africa.
Okay, I
You
think
guys
what I
keep
said
an eye
in
on.
I think what I said in the comments in our conversation, I think Ireland are in a unique position at the moment. They've obviously dominated, and they have been one of the best teams in the world, probably the best team over the last 3-4 years or so. And what I said was that I believe they were lucky to come away with a win. And I think there was a few people who kind of disagreed with that statement. I think the game against New Zealand was obviously a outlier, and I took it as I gave Ireland the benefit of the doubt, and I basically said that I thought that there was a bad performance and it was just a one-off and that kind of thing. But coming against Argentina, what we see from all the big teams, the South Africans, the New Zealand, these massive teams, is when you have a bad game like that, you come back with a massive win. And I think I said I was expecting a 15-25 point win against Argentina, because I thought Ireland were going to come back. And Caelan had said to me the week before that he didn't think it was like a blip, it was more of a trend. And I must admit, after this week, I think I'm more inclined to agree with him. I think Caelan was right in his assessment of what he said. I think that if they want to be one of the top teams, I think you lose a big game and you come back and you don't just win a game. The first thing is you make sure you come back and you show the performance and make your country proud. And I think they were struggling to do that through no fault of their own, because like you said, it's an
The
aging
first half was
squad.
really good, it should be said. And I think the first half was exactly what you said they should do. Bounce out, straight out of the blocks.
Exactly.
Really fast start.
Yeah.
But after about a half an hour, it was like a different
game. And the thing is,
what changed? What was the moment that changed? Was
I
there
think
a pivot
half-time.
moment?
I think it was a game into
Malaise.
I think it was halftime, and there was a little bit of fatigue. Argentina got 2 quick fire penalties, and then the try, and then it's a different game.
Yeah, and I think Argentina are in Ireland are in a unique position at the moment. We know that Argentina are improving. They're on the up. They've had 4 massive wins, 3 massive wins against the Southern Hemisphere teams this year. But Ireland, if you want to be one of the top teams, I think they're in a unique position, Ireland now, where you're looking and you're saying you've won the game, but you're treating it like a loss. Because if that had been the All Blacks or the Springboks, you come away from the game thinking we need to get better and we need to get better quick. And I think this is the first time Ireland have been in this position. So we need to see what happens from here. And they need to. We know they've got the structures in place. They've got the coaching staff in place. They've got the systems in place. It's just a case of following through on it now, because it's going to get really tough. Because running around with that target on your back is really, really hard. And not all teams manage to do it. And I do believe Ireland can come back from this. But I don't know who they're touring next year. But it's going to be a real...
In Central Europe, it'll be Georgia, Portugal, and Romania, I believe. Not necessarily touring, but there's a chance of like a mini competition.
You are definitely... The Six Nations is a pivotal one for you guys, I think. That's where you're going to have to try some new combinations. You're going to have to blood some new players. And we've all seen what happens when you do that. It doesn't matter what team it is. You struggle.
I don't think you can do that in the Six Nations.
Well, you have no choice at the moment, I think, because if England, I don't think are going to go away.
I don't think they will either. There is a massive push from within Irish rugby that the Six Nations is the cash cow. It is what funds the game, and it is. And like, I'm not denying that isn't a massive factor. Of course, it's a massive factor. But I think there will be a push to, and even from Simon Easterby's own perspective, do you want, like, you've got England first up? Do you want to be handing out 2 or 3 debuts in that game in your first game?
I wouldn't say against
coach.
England, but definitely against teams like, Italy, Wales. I would definitely blood more players, because you get past the Six Nations and then you're touring again, and then it doesn't get any easier.
It'll be that tour. I feel like that tour will be, there you go. But I think from my perspective, and you can disagree with me on this, but if you're going to use a tour of mainland Europe, and I do not mean to sound disrespectful when I say this, against Georgia, Portugal, Romania, you're not going to learn a lot. Like, I'm not trying to disparage, because those teams have made massive strides. But what standard are they? Essentially, Challenge Cup for the clubs, give or take. The problem isn't that we haven't seen Irish players play at that standard. It's the fact that we haven't seen them get into the training squads to even get a run out in these games at all. And I think that's where the frustration lies. And like, again, I do not want to take away from this player. Tom Clarkson won his debut on Friday. These Friday games throw me. I want to say yesterday.
Yeah,
I'll just start saying yesterday anymore. Fuck this. He won his debut on Friday, and I'm delighted for him, because any player wins their own debut, you have to be happy for them. But Leinster were allowed to sign 35-year-old Rabah Slimani because they didn't feel like Tom Clarkson was of standard. That's fair enough. That's their prerogative. But we work in a union system, so these things can get criticised at the RFU's table. But Scott Wilson, who was one of the best young players in the URC last year for Ulster in his breakout year, goes on the Emerging Ireland Tour, doesn't start a single game, missed Ulster's games against the Bulls and Lions, the 2 best teams scrummaging-wise, and he doesn't get an Ireland call-up.
But the thing is with you Irish
it's almost
guys,
that sense of like, and I'll let you jump in a second. I think that's what's feeding into it, is my greater point, is like, yes, we're rotating, but Farrell's cohesion ball, as some people call it, is so dependent on like how Leinster play, that it's almost like, well, are we going to see anyone else? Like, there's almost a fear factor at this stage. It's like, are we ever going to see Gavin Coombs get capped again? Like, and like, when you say that out loud, it sounds stupid, because Gavin Coombs is one of the best players in the URC, and this is a URC podcast, so I'll try and tie everything back to URC if I can. But that's where the frustration starts to kick in amongst Irish fans. Not everyone. A whole hand up, not everyone. But I think that's where, and like the whole thing about we don't have the depth has really pissed people off. Because if you're a Munster fan and you're not gone away from back-to-back URC finals, but you've had as many players capped for other nations as Ireland since the start of 2023, it's not the depth.
The thing is, in South Africa, you have, in the Springbok squad at the moment, you do have journeymen. You have men who've travelled, who've played numerous, like Marnie Libbok, for example. He's played at the Bulls, he's played at other teams, he's played at the Stormers.
And they're still important.
No, they are important, the squad, but the thing is, they can be a lot more, it's almost like in Ireland, this is a regional thing. And then when they don't make it, when they get a couple of caps for Ireland, they're either written off completely, or they don't get a shot at any other proper. You don't always have to play for Leinster to be playing your best rugby. You can go somewhere else and you can excel there as well.
Well,
and that's
the
maybe
prime
a lesson
example I give is Jeremy Luckman, because even when Jeremy Luckman signed for Munster, I wasn't sure how good of a player he was. He hadn't played a lot for Leinster. His scrummaging was not of standard. He's now a really, really good scrummager. He's 6 Ireland caps. Now, granted, again, Andrew Porter, world class. And if Andrew Porter can go 80 minutes, I'd nearly stick him in there for 80 minutes at this stage. He's that good. But that kind of backs up your point. It's like,
Robert, did you write off
he's-
Jean Klein? Did you write
Look,
off Jean Klein?
well, I didn't. I
Did a lot
hand
of
on
people
heart,
in
I
Ireland
didn't,
did.
but Ireland did.
Yeah.
Ireland would have been better with Sean Klein at that World Cup than Joe McCarthy. Joe McCarthy's a good player, but Sean Klein is 7-8 years older than him. He's more experienced. He was on great form. He would have been better there for Ireland. I don't think that's a controversial statement. He has his medal, and I'm delighted for him because he's one of the nicest guys you will ever speak to, and I've been lucky enough to speak to
Well,
him.
he's still in the squad
interview.
as well, so he's not.
Yeah.
It's not just that they go.
Oh yeah, no, it's not just the medal,
Probably
but
gonna play
yeah,
against Wales, isn't he?
oh yeah, they're naming their squad on Tuesday, so that means it's going to be massive changes. That's the way I'd read it anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll come on to that in a minute. So, kind of my view on the Ireland Argentina game is I was surprised at the negativity, but then, I kind of thought, well, if the standard is is this team the best team in the world at the moment? And the answer is clearly no, the way they've been playing anyway. But at the same time, it's only 160 minutes of rugby since they just beat the Springboks in South Africa, where they arguably were. So it's amazing how quickly these things change in terms of playing minutes, and the likes of the All Blacks and the Springboks have played a lot of rugby between now and then. And I do feel it was a massive game of two halves. And I think we've all agreed that half time was to answer your point, Ben, was the half time was the change because it was all Ireland in that first half. And we kind of said, like in the previews, that Ireland and Argentina are so different that the game is going to go one way and it will massively suit one of them and massively not suit the other. In the end, it turned out the first half went Ireland's way a lot. And, I remind people that Ty Burns dropped the ball over the line. So if he scores that and they gets the conversion, it's a completely different conversation.
Argentina probably dropped their heads, like
Yeah.
realistically. And like even if Finlay Beelham's yellow card becomes red, maybe Argentina
Which
get
should
back
have
into the
been.
game quicker, which
Yeah.
I think it should have been. Like I will hold my hand up. At the time, I said red card because I feel like he got away by fact of it was a bad clear out
Yeah.
power wise. But look, but
And
I think that's the kind of swings and roundabouts you're talking about. It could have easily went to Argentina quicker. That's why the Crowley drop goal was so important because that was just as Ireland were starting to just fade a tiny bit. He kicks that drop goal, keeps the momentum into halftime.
And then in the second half, it went to Argentina's way. They came out with great intent, like you said. They got a couple of early penalties. They got their try, they got really. We saw their identity. The running sideways, the sevens influence, the trying to beat players, taking one-on-ones. Great finish for the try. Juan Cruz Malia, I think.
Unbelievable. Like what? Like what?
I think he's an
what a
outside
try.
shout for a World Player of the Year nomination. I don't think he'll win it, but I would be thinking about nominating him because what he's done club and
And
country
we just
level.
nominate like half the Toulouse players because they're just inevitably some of the best players in the world.
Like
even
I
like
mean, look what Nick
Ruma.
Frost did today, but
Was it Ruma that played at the
oh,
weekend?
it's
Was
Richie
really
Arnold
good.
plays it. Sorry?
Was it Ruma that played back row for France and was really good? There was
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
like
Rumat. Yeah.
they just have them. But like that try was, I know people will look at like Ireland's defense and they did make an error, but he is electric.
And also with
Like-
Argentina, they do sacrifice the beginning of games. If you look at the game where they lost to the Springboks, they went 3 scores down within the first 20 minutes and then fought back into it. Their fitness, if you look at their players, all their players are quite slight by rugby standards. They don't have any big beasts, but that pays off at the end of the games because their fitness is amazing. Their defense for the last set with Ireland on their line, or the last defensive set, unbelievable. Like, I'm not sure any other team can bring that intensity, which brings me on to.
Well, there is one other team that can.
Okay, all right, you'll have your moment.
I respect that. I respect that so much.
I think Ryan Bird going off injured minutes after he came on was a massive turning point in the game.
Same as last week, mind. It was exactly the same last week. That player, who was the player that went off after coming straight on?
Tom O'Toole.
Yeah. So
What was
same
it
thing
Baird
happened
went
last
off for again? Baird was a rook
head
clear out.
Is
HIA.
it an HIA? I don't know
Yeah.
what it was
HIA
for.
again?
But
I can't remember.
the point is the players who came on, I think Peter O'Mahony carried 5 times for 3 meters, which depending on what he was doing, if it was all about the attacking on the 5-meter line, that's normal.
He's not
and-
coming on to carry ball anyway. Like he's not
Yeah.
like Jack
Well,
Coleman
exactly.
comes on to carry ball. but
Exactly.
Peter
And then
O'Mahony doesn't.
I don't think Cian Healy carried at all. I think
Herring had 1 for 1 meter or something.
I think Herring had 4 for 0 or something. But anyway, the point is
that's
that
it.
the forwards who came on, and bear in mind that Ireland are a team that's gone 6-2 quite a lot. The forwards who came on didn't have an impact in terms of an attacking point of view. And I
I
think,
think Clarkson did defensively. I
yeah,
should probably put that in. He made one really good shot on, I think it was Malia again, or maybe
yeah,
Maroney. Someone in that midfield, that outside midfield channel, makes a
mm,
big shot, shuts them
mm,
down. And like, but again, I think that's the thing about the Ireland bench. It's like they're designed to come on and see out games, but that's 2 weeks in a row. The momentum had swung the other way, and you're
yeah,
wondering. And I actually think people would say it's biased, and I'm not. It's not that. I think they actually could have done with just bringing on Craig Casey and bringing on a bit of zip. He got 6 minutes, and it's not that Gibson Park was playing that badly, but sometimes just to get a new set of eyes, especially at 9 in particular, because I've seen it before with, say, Munster, for example, just from knowing Murray and Casey.
mm,
Sometimes they come on and they just see something, because that 9, you're always watching how the game is flowing, and I think that could have been a sub that they made, but it is unfortunate that like 2 weeks in a row they've had a player go off within like 2 or 3
yeah.
minutes of coming
And
on.
a player like Ryan Bird, who's so dynamic,
Yeah.
that would have been, I
Probably
can
wouldn't have
imagine,
suited them the way the game was going, but definitely could have if Ireland had wrestled any momentum back in.
yeah.
Definitely could have.
The players who did make an impact, I thought Osborne made a good impact when he came on. Well, I can't remember where he was playing,
He
where
went
he
to
came on
12.
for.
He
Went
came
to
straight
12.
in for Henshaw.
I thought
I'd have probably gone with either Osborne to 15 or Crowley to 15, just to kind of give Prendergast support. Now, Prendergast did well, don't get me
I
wrong,
did think,
but
yeah. Well, that I'll come on to Prendergast now then, because I think you're right. I think Prendergast did go well, and he's one of those players who just looks good. Like you can't say, "Oh, what did he do?" And you're like, he looked
he's
good."
just polished. Like,
Yeah,
polished is kind of the word for it.
and he's got the same stylist as Manny Lebock, and he. I would like to see Andy Farrell be a bit braver. I would like to see him go, I'm actually going to start Prendergast and have Crowley on the bench. Not because he's a better player, but I would like to see someone like that.
He's 8 starts for Leinster, like.
I know,
But that comes
but
into the
he's in the
conversation
system
again.
though. He's been in the
But we're not
system.
talking about
But
Leinster,
like
though. We're
that comes
talking
into
about
the
Ireland.
conversation again. There's lads who've won things for their province who haven't got a cap. I'm not saying Sam Prendergast is a wonderfully talented rugby player. I'm not saying he's not. Like, he deserves to win a test cap as well. But like, that is again part of the argument. It's like Andy Farrell was bold there, and he's blooded a 4th out half or a 5th out half in the last 12 months, including Johnny Sexton, who of course has now retired. And he's been bold in that particular position. But we've seen 2 props or 2 loose head props. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's like that kind of, like we need to be bold at prop. We might need to be bold at second row, because like, God love him, I love Tyke Byrne, but he's just looked old the last 2 weeks. Like, he barred the first 20 minutes at the weekend. He was really good, but
yeah,
he looks old.
I think there's just now unnecessary pressure on the Fiji game in terms of everyone's looking at Farrell and going, right, well,
That
so what are you going to
Australia
do in this game then? Because if you pick all the old guard, we're not going to like that. And if you pick a load of new players, then everyone's going to be getting the microscopes out and watching it. And if it's a iffy game or an iffy performance, which it always is when you blood players en masse, then people are going to be going, well, we've painted ourselves into a corner here.
And that brings you back to that conversation. Ireland shouldn't have to blood players en masse, but it just comes to this position every year or two where they just be like, right, if we want to use the squad, we're going to have to do it en masse. Whereas I think, like, the stat that I seen was since the start of 2023, Ireland have given debuts to 8 players. That was in a World Cup year with warm-ups. South Africa, New Zealand, 13. England, 16. France, 21. I don't know what Scotland is. Scotland's going to be sky high now after, the weekend and their
massive.
tour of Fiji.
Summer,
Or the Americans.
North America, South America.
But I think
there's
that's
about 30 new caps, I think, at least.
Yeah, that's part of your point there, Hugh, because like they either go en masse now and it's going to be incredibly janky and they're going to limber over the line, or you go full strength and it's like, well, this is a window lost. And even the Australia game, like, number one, because there's a Joe Schmidt factor, and his biggest strength has always been finding an opposition weakness and using it against you. But there's also the fact that it's on a URC weekend. And if you even rotate a slight bit, of course there's going to be backlash, because, if you say Gibson Park gets a rest, for example, Casey and Murray are gone from Munster. for the weekend and in a big game against the Lions, and like we'll get onto that at the time. I think that's in almost a parasocial way. It's fascinating how the next 2 weeks go for optics, because Farrell has been the man who could do no wrong. And
Yeah.
now he looks like a man under pressure. I've never seen it from him. Even when Ireland were going bad in early 2021, he did not look as tetchy as he does right now. Now it's like, well, fuck you guys. Like, why have you all turned on me? Which is fascinating because, as you kind of alluded to last week, like, if Ireland were to lose one of the next 2 games, it won't be just the Irish media. The English media would be dying to jump on top of them and say that, you know, Steve Borthwick should manage the Lions or something because they go and beat Japan. So, like, it is, from a narrative point of view, it's
Yeah, oh my
fascinating.
God, if Ireland lose to Australia, the cat is
Oh.
well out of the bag and amongst the pigeons.
And it's
the
going to be
worms are
so
there
funny as well, because so many Irish pundits wrote off Joe Schmidt after he left Ireland, but he's still an unbelievable head coach. And I know we'll get onto it later. We've talked enough about Ireland. But yeah, there's just so many narratives now. And I do love it. I love it from our perspective as talking about it, because Ireland had become a boring team. They hit their 4th or 5th gear, they steamroll a team, they win a game, same team comes in the next week. You know, you make a change, that guy plays well. That's all gone. The only positive about all this is Ireland are now a really fascinating team. And I like that. I like a bit of chaos.
Ben, anything else on this game before we move on?
I think what epitomised Ireland it was quite turgid, their sort of second half attacking play. But there's that period between 60 and 75, 60 and 70 odd minutes where it just was going sideways the entire time. It was that sort of between the 10 and the 22, and there just didn't seem to be that attacking creativity or flair that I've seen.
That's why I leave on Henshaw, if I'm honest. If anyone comes off in that back line, or if anyone stays on, it's Henshaw for me, because at least you keep the directness, because you already don't have Bundy in that team.
He played well.
And Robbie Henshaw he had a really good game, and it's a weird one. I don't think Robbie Henshaw's had like a bad game for Ireland in almost about 2 or 3 years. He's not necessarily a guaranteed starter, but he's just been really solid. But I did pick up on that. They went a little bit lateral, not having Baird there, not even having, like, say, they usually have Kelleher off the bench, or I'm forgetting someone. They usually have Kelleher, they usually have Baird, and they usually have Conan off the bench, or maybe a Henshaw off the bench, or McCluskey. They didn't have any of those. They had no one to really force compressions and make Argentina sit down. And like, one thing that shocked me about Argentina, I haven't seen a lot of them this year, they were so patient. Like, if there was a tagline for their performance, it was patient. In attack, in defense, they just waited it out.
Has to be patient, because you have to be willing to go nowhere for a few phases.
Albanos was class on Friday night. He was so good under the high ball. There was quite a few who took under pressure.
I feel bad for him for missing that drop goal, because that was his only mistake.
It was a poor option, I thought, and he missed that, and also there was a kick to touch off a penalty where he got like no meters from it.
Yeah, and he kind of pulled that one.
But I think then you have to I gave a lot of credit to Contepone for his substitutions, because Garcia needed to come in from Bertrand, who was having a bit of a stinker, and he did it like early on in the second half. He was like, "You're off, you're on," made a huge impact. And I thought Carreras needed to come on when he did, and that made an impact as well. Anyway, that's that game. If you're enjoying what you're hearing and watching so far, please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. We are pushing for 1,000 subscribers. We're like 40 away, so we're desperate, and that will help us monetize the channel and cover all the costs of making this. We currently pay to make all of this. So if you could support us with a subscription on YouTube, we would really appreciate that. If you're listening on the audio version, make sure you give us a 5-star review. If you leave a lovely comment, we'll write back. We'll get in touch with you. We'll send you a hamper, and then we'll need even more YouTube money to pay for all the hampers that we'll have to send. So if you could support us, that's massively appreciated. Share links with friends as well, and say, listen to what these idiots talk about. Anyway, speaking of which,
that's
Alan,
me, isn't it? That's me.
Springboks beat England. I have all of my things to say about the other team in this game, so I'll let you talk about your own team first. What? Just give us your thoughts, because a lot of talking points.
I think before the game, I thought there was always a chance England could come right, because they were desperate not to concede 3 losses at home. So they were really going to be up for it. And notoriously, we do come unstuck in at least one of the games on the tour. And I think we targeted this game as our most difficult one. But I think, once we got the yellow card, I think England started panicking. I think their decision-making, their discipline. I think South Africa's defense in the last 30 minutes of the game man down, I think was immense. I think Eben Etzebeth and Peter Steph du Toit were amazing. I think they were all over them. And obviously Cheslin Colby. And I do want to say as well that I don't think Marnie Lubbock had his worst game. I know he missed a kick in that and a few kicks, but I do think that Andre Pollard could have missed a kick as well if he hadn't it hit the crossbar and came back. So,
but he has the crossfield. That was by Lubbock, wasn't it? The crossfield kick.
There was a crossfield kick. Yeah, so I was okay with the way Lubbock played. I mean, I know you got the hook, but I think it's just a case that there is definitely an element of like unpredictability when Marnie Lubbock was there. But England's, like I said, England started to panic. I think Damien Dearlin. I mean, I can go through the whole team, but this play here by Cheslin Colby, you don't really need to say too much about it, do you? It's just calm, it's measured, and he knows what he's doing. So yeah, I'm really happy with the win. I was pretty
Jesse
happy
Krill
with
there for him.
I was pretty happy with the 9-point win. So yeah, not really too much to say wrong about the performance actually, except for the fact that we can do better. I think that's pretty evident that we can. But 4 tries to 2, you can't really go wrong with that.
Can I ask you a question on that, Adam? Because I didn't see a lot of South African games this year, and plenty of people listening will be the same. I thought Delende, Creel, Colby in particular were unbelievable on the day. Now, I was watching this kind of half watching, it was on at work, so excuse me if I am inaccurate. But is that the best performance we've seen from Cheslin Colby since the World Cup? It felt like he was amazing.
He was amazing against Argentina in the last game of the championship.
Yeah, I think he was pretty immense there. But I think, Kurtley Arendse has an amazing game, or Cheslin Colby does. But what's most interesting to me is that this is a completely separate backline, a different backline to the backline they played the week before. So they obviously have 2 game plans, don't they? They've got a forward-orientated game, which I think is a lot slower and obviously suffocating against the Scottish. And then this game, they went with it's much quicker, it's more instinctive. And unfortunately, or fortunately, it needs Marnie Lubbock, because I don't think Andre Pollard has got that same unpredictability. He's got much more of a stable, influence on the team. And obviously they went with the 3 backs on the bench as well. So definitely 2 types of game. I hope we see Marnie Lubbock in the next game. I think we should just run with him for now. But I definitely think it was one of the better performances I've seen our backline do. And they were under immense pressure. You don't often see this. I thought they had us on the ropes, England, in the last 20 minutes of the game. But I think the defense by our guys was just unbelievable.
Etzebeth was imperious. Yeah, I mean, most caps for South Africa Springbok now, 130, 133 caps.
130 tests, yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible, that career. And he just doesn't seem to be losing any part of his ability that's been there.
He just doesn't take a day off. And I actually thought England's second row was fronted up really well, but then it's like Etzebeth just comes up with a monster tackle or a monster play, and it's like, man,
it was an interesting selection of RG Snowman as well. I really think the Boks went for a razzle-dazzle selection. If you look at Fazzi being in there, RG, his best attribute is his offloads. And Manny as well. If it's funny, because the whole narrative will be that Andre Pollard came on and saved the day. But if you actually look at what he did in the game, he touched the ball less than half a dozen times. Now, maybe you could say he's got that calming influence because he's a leader. And I'd say yeah, cool, fine. I completely buy that. But I agree with you, Alan. I think the Boks look a lot better in attack with Manny there. And with the missed kicks from Manny, one was a touchline conversion that hit the upright. So it's, players will miss
it. It's a 50-50 kick out there, isn't it?
Jack Crowley missed a conversion at the weekend. And the one from halfway, I was surprised that he took it on, because the graphic came up on the screen of 56% probability. And I'm like, well, that's a 56 probability for someone who is a very good goal kicker. Because a lot of kickers wouldn't take on a kick from that distance. So that data set is taken from players who take on kicks from that distance, which I haven't seen Manny try one from halfway before.
I don't think he's known for his long-range kicking, so I don't think that's necessary. But he's got no issues with his confidence. And I think Rusty started to get a bit impatient because he constantly gets questioned about him. Let's be clear, Rusty has absolutely no doubt in any of his players. If he didn't think they were the right players, they wouldn't be there. So him getting questioned all the time about Marnie Lubbock and his kicking. There are other things that Marnie Lubbock does which make up for it to a degree. We know it can go really wrong, but that's why you have Andre Pollard on the bench and Grant Williams. South Africans play off 9 a lot. So what you'll see is a lot of box kicking, a lot of sprinting from the base, with where you have Williams and Reinach. Whereas
Grant Williams' box kicks are poetry.
Yeah, and when you go to New Zealand, teams like New Zealand, they're a lot of fly half. So very rare that those guys kick. That Roy God, it's all back to the fly half, and then they take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you're playing off 9, if you are going to make that your main now that we've got this new situation, you can't block the kickers, you can't block the attackers. It's going to put more pressure on the scrum half. You need Amani Lebok.
I actually think
he gets the back line
it's going to suit the winger 9, like the kind of Grant Williams, what I call a winger 9, like the guy who is just that athletic, that quick, because you're going to have situations where
the try.
Okay, now
I'd rather charge down try.
I'd rather talk about this one, to be honest. Is this the 2? No, this is this step.
Grant Williams.
Like, this is, for anyone who hasn't seen it, this is unbelievable.
Who hasn't seen it? Everyone's got to have seen
the match was
this.
on TNT. Not a lot of people have TNT, but I can't get over this. It's bang.
I'll see you later.
Like, oh my, but I don't want to criticize Freddie Stewart too much. Like, if Freddie Stewart has no haters, like, I'm dead. Like, it's that situation. But Freddie Stewart, like, no one is stopping Williams there. Like, it doesn't matter that Stewart is so determined.
I think
no one
is that with the new, I think with the new rules regarding blockers, the kick and chase game is going to open up again. It's going to become more of a viable option. A lot of because the amount of restarts that teams are not collecting and messing up on, and the amount of up and unders, and if you in that situation, you need Freddie Stewart. One of you mentioned height. So yeah, sure, you need a tall fullback in those situations. But if you're looking for, if you've got backs like Fussy, Arendse, and Colby, and then you have a scrum half like Grant Williams, who are you covering? And then you've got a centre combination of Deer Lende and Creel. So and then you have Marnie Lebok in there as well. Who are you watching? Who's making the decisions? Is it Williams? Is it Lebok? Jesse Creel knows how to make decisions. So awesome. From a
Razzie said it in Chasing the Sun too. He says no one can prepare for us because they don't know what players we're going to be selecting and they don't know what game plan we're going to be playing. So, and I think that they're really leaning into that now. And I don't think that the Boks have like they kind of do, but they don't have like the best team and the B team. It's kind of which best team do we pick? Yeah. They're the only nation for me at the moment that's playing a 23-man game. Everyone else is having,
and even at that, it's like 35-man game at this stage.
Yeah, everyone else is dipping massively when their bench comes on. Boks get stronger, and that's amazing. Grant Williams, I think, has been the best scrum half in the Southern Hemisphere this year, and it's weird that he's been always off the bench, but he took his opportunity in this game. He was unbelievable. Ben, what was your take on the game?
Just quite happy to see England lose again, I think. First of all, I'll get that one in because there's been a lot of England fans a bit salty saying, oh, at least we scored a couple of tries against the Boks. South Africa had their B team out last week. They still beat you, and it feeds into the conversation that South Africa don't have a B team. They have a team and another team, depending on the situation that they're playing against. Like Al said, they were more forward orientated last week against Scotland, and then yesterday went for a more expansive game. And it's just enjoyable to watch South Africa at the moment. I just love that back line. I think what was interesting, it goes back to the conversations that I did say to yesterday. I felt a bit brutal he was coming off early, but I did read a comment today that it looked like DLND was trotting off, thinking that Pollard was going to be replacing him as well. So I'm not sure.
And Pollard went, nope.
No, Pollard was like,
you're on, ease off.
Yeah.
Which so probably shows it was going to be I think it was going to be predetermined that now Lebok would go to 12 and Pollard would see it out, because I think even with the game, the way the game was going, it wouldn't have been a bad idea because it was so nip and tuck. There was chances for both teams, but like there's also the element of Dealende was that good on the night. You probably just don't take him off as well. Like that's also a factor.
Interesting thing about South Africa in this game is their top carrier, I think, was RG Snyman with 9. They had no players make double.
How many offloads to nobody did he do? He needs to stop doing that. Just popping the
he
ball
was
up
top
to
of
nobody.
He was top of offloads.
It's been a killer from all year. Like even at Leinster, where like I know a lot of his offloads stuck. He did the same thing at Munster last year. He's done the same thing in South Africa. There is just the law of averages. You throw more offloads, more are just going to hit the ground. That'll happen. But it's like if they could have Fassi or Williams on 5 more offloads in a season, It's going to make a huge difference.
South Africa only attempted 7 offloads according to this, which I'm very surprised by. It felt like a lot more. I think RG Snyman was all 7.
Yeah, a lot more tip-on passes too, though, as well. I think they played really, really flat to line. I think England were kind of. I don't want to say England were scared of the physicality because I don't think that was the case. They did front up to a degree, but England's backline had no substitute for South Africa in terms of playing to the line.
England bashing! England bashing! Here we go. Right,
I'm not going to bash England. I'm not going to bash England because I actually think England did all right. I think South Africa played really, really well.
This is the only chance all autumn you're going to get to bash England. Bash England.
I've my own channel. If I want to bash England, I'll just do it on my own volition. Like
Stop
I'll get
promoting
drunk and
other channels.
I'll go back about the 800 years of oppression that happened to Ireland. Like I have loads of opportunities.
Only 800.
That's a podcast for another day. Yeah.
But I actually think like, and it was Slade and remind me who was at 12. It was Slade.
No, Slade is at 12. Slade was at 12. Lawrence was at 13.
Slade did not have his best game, like at all.
But I feel like Slade is getting a lot of the blame. But Ollie Lawrence is playing 13, which is different from what they had against New Zealand. They've swapped them. Ollie Lawrence, 9 meters from 8 carries.
He's a 12.
Well, no, but everyone in England says that he's a 13.
He's not.
Because he needs to play in the space because he's not a crash ball 12. And it brings me back to the stat that Charlie Morgan always refers to, is that on any given English Premiership weekend, only 2 inside centres are English. Because such is the saturation of foreign players in England that they don't have any coming through. Ollie Lawrence, how do you play in the 13 channel and only make 9 meters? Like, you should be getting that from
Jesse
one carry. Yeah, no,
Jesse Creel is part of the reason. Like,
if you're 13, the assumption is that you're getting the ball in space.
I think they're using him wrong. I think if he plays as a 13, he needs to be an inside 13 who's running off shoulders consistently, who's not,
But he doesn't win the collisions. He's not. He's never won collisions.
To a degree, no one's going to win collisions against the Springboks. I mean, if you win collisions against the Springboks, but then you win the game.
Portugal won a few.
He never has though. I remember seeing once Robbie Henshaw pick him up like a little doll.
Yeah,
but Robbie Henshaw. I've met Robbie Henshaw. Robbie Henshaw's a big man. Like he's deceptively big. But enough about England bashing for 2 minutes, just so I can get in. I think England. And maybe this is my own bias kicking in. I don't think their defense is anyways up to scratch. And they're coming out, like there's people coming out saying, get rid of the blitz. Doesn't work. You had the man who was in the room for the last 2 World Cup wins. He fell out with Steve Borthwick, and you're blaming that for the reason your defense is shocking. No, it's because you got fucking average. Sorry, now here comes the English passion. You've got average centres. Slade and Lawrence do not start for Scotland, they don't start for South Africa, they don't start for New Zealand, they don't start for Australia at the moment, they don't start for France, they don't start for Ireland. Like I said, Lawrence might go.
Do they start for Wales?
Wales. Yeah,
I wouldn't swap Slade for Slade at 13, maybe for. Anyway, we'll talk to Wales. We'll talk about Wales later. But
we'll talk about Wales. But I just think, like, ultimately, your defensive system is set by your centres and your outside winger. Do England have top defensive players? No. Is the Premiership even a remotely defensive league? No, it is glorified sevens.
There's not many of those at the moment, though, Kaelan. There's not many defensive leagues.
I think. There's not many defensive leagues, but there's good defensive players in every league, apart from the Premiership, really. Like you look at the URC.
You see the scores, the average scores of the Premiership. It's outrageous every week, and you got 52-45, or 45-38, whatever. I don't want to watch that rugby.
Look at the top 14, for instance. Like, look at how Emilian Gaetan, he's only 21 years of age, how he's just a good
top 14
player.
Is a very defensive league, I would
say. Very defensive, but like they make good defensive reads. They're physical in contact. They're not necessarily all playing a blitz or whatever, or all playing a drift. But I genuinely think the reason it didn't work for England is because they didn't get the buy-in. And like, I don't believe
okay, I've got to jump in here because yes, I completely agree. And this has been the thing of England all year, is nothing in English rugby is pulling in the same direction as anything else. No. Everybody's pulling in different directions. Like they had the World Cup, and everyone said during the World Cup, Jesus Christ, we cannot stand to watch this. This is unwatchable rugby. But they said, because it's knockout footy, we'll stick with you. And they finished third. And they went, okay. And everyone said,
which is fair.
That worked for the World Cup. Knockout footy, you got to play a certain way. Fine. You got to progress. And then they came out in the Six Nations, and you got players like Jamie George, who is, by the way, off the field, one of the most influential and powerful rugby players we've seen in a very long time. What he's achieved off the pitch politically is very
One
impressive.
of the nicest guys in the game, and very ironically, some of the nicest rugby players in England came from Saracens, and they were the biggest team that breaks to play against.
So-
Owen Farrell is
so-
the same Maro Doge.
So he's come out, and he wasn't the only one, came out and said, we want to entertain fans. We don't want to play boring rugby and things. So imagine that. Imagine Sia Khaleesi coming out and saying, we don't want to play the game plan that Razzie's told us to play. Like, it would never, imagine Peter O'Mahony saying about Farrell. Well, I can't imagine Finn saying it about Tooney, but moving on.
He probably already has
He
to
did
his
say
face.
it. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
he changed the England 38 all game. Finn Russell
Yeah.
decided to be the manager and the captain that day, didn't he?
So you've already got the player power balance between Borthwick and his players is very almost in favour of the players at the moment. And you've got
Look
the
at
whole
the vice captains.
yeah,
Every vice
you've got the
captain is on
vice
central
captains,
contract.
you've got the contracts that they handed out. Finn Smith hasn't played a minute in the autumn yet he's one of the 3 fly halves on one of these special contracts.
No loose heads.
You've got that going on.
Sorry, no tight heads. No tight heads. Sorry.
Yeah. Like you said, Caelan, everyone just, what is England's rugby DNA? What do you think of? You think of
Big
Martin
men.
Johnson. You think of, sadly, Lawrence Lalliot. You think of,
Neil back.
yeah, you
Johnny
think of big.
Wilkinson.
You think
Nah.
of South Africa
Andy Good.
from Wish, basically.
Back off. But the toughest pack you can play against.
Yeah. And
Tough men.
the pack does have good players in it. Maro Itoje has been very good this autumn. There's no point denying it.
George
And I
Martin had a
thi-
good game.
I think, yeah, George Marsden had a good game. I think Cunningham South has done very well. Underhill has shown that he should be playing for England all the time, really. Ben Earl, we know what he can do. Although Ben Earl's not a big man, but he's obviously has physicality in different ways.
Can we discuss that tackle in a minute?
Yeah.
That tackle by Khaleesi.
So the pack isn't bad, but you've got this pulling of wanting to play other ways. And I will never forget all of the people who went at lengths to try and tell us that England were an exciting team now. And they lied. They lied. And how many times did they break 20 points or 25 points scored at home? How many times did they break it? Hardly ever. Hardly ever. And even when they did last week, they still lost. Yet the defense, the whole point of England this year was supposed to be this defense, as you alluded to, Caelan. They got Felix Jones in. They made a huge noise about it, that they're going to be a blitz team now. They're going to have the South Africa World Cup winning defense. They've bought it. They've got it. And they're shipping 4 tries a game at home every game.
Yeah.
Exactly as you said, the Premiership doesn't support the England national side in any way. In any way, it's saturated with foreign players. The under-20s players for England get lost in it. They don't come through. England are the worst nation for bringing through under-20s talent. Even though how good their under-20s team is, it's sensational. That's what makes it a crime that they don't come through. And I don't understand what Borthwick's doing with his selection, because we can have a joke about the Leinster bias in the Ireland team, or the Toulouse bias in the France team, or the Crusaders bias in the All Blacks team, although that's starting to reduce a bit now. In that backline that England finished with, they had Harry Randall from Bristol, Marcus Smith from Harlequins, they had Henry Slade from Exeter, Ollie Lawrence from Bath, they had a fullback from Leicester. I think both wingers were from Northampton. So out of a possible...
Who were the wingers?
Freeman and Slatham.
Oh yeah, he's
Right.
So out of 7 backs, you've got 6 clubs represented. It's a shambles. That's 101 how not to select. And
I think you see that in their performances as well. Like, I actually think, and again, slight bit of bias here, because I think Bath and Northampton, I think, are extremely well coached teams. If you're going to roll the dice on anyone, go with them. And yes, I understand, like, Finn isn't eligible, and there's bits like that. Like, I understand that they're not going to get Finn in, but when the likes of George Furbank and Tommy Freeman played for England 2 years ago, before Northampton's uptick, they didn't look like great players. When Northampton, essentially since they appointed Phil Dowson as director of rugby, and they started to turn a corner, they looked extremely well coached. I'll add Alex Mitchell to that. They have improved. I actually think for England, there could be a coaching issue more than just player. And yes, it's pulling against each other. Like, the man they brought in to replace Felix Jones is also going to coach the blitz. So, like, it's not that they're going to go back to drift defense like overnight. That's not going to happen. But I do think there's a coaching thing because to me, Bath and Northampton are the two best coach teams in England. Exeter were there, and I think Exeter punched above their weight before this season. And I'm forgetting someone. And Leicester, I think, to be fair, are typically well coached, especially around the forwards. They're typically tough, like it's a club identity thing. But that's where I think holding against each other is a factor because, like, can you really drop Marcus Smith? No. Like
No,
realistically,
he's the only thing that's working well for them at the moment.
Like, could they go with a Northampton midfield? Not really, because the Northampton midfield is not that big. Do you know what I mean? It's Dingwall and sometimes Freeman. They're not big enough to be
Isn't
international
Dingwall
centre.
Scottish?
Not Dingwall, the other lad. Oh my god, they have another centre. I can't think of his
I thought
name.
their centre was Scottish, but I can't. It doesn't matter. Move on.
They
Carry
definitely
on,
have
carry on.
they definitely have an English centre. And maybe I'm just getting names mixed up. And maybe Slade Holmes played centre. Maybe that's it for Northampton. I don't know. I can't remember. I'm tired. I was working to do it long last night. Shut up. Like bank on Fairbank. And then you get to that core and that cohesion. And like, yes, I understand everything I've said before. I'm not saying cohesion is a bad thing. But if you're trying to find an identity, go with what's working. And I genuinely do think that, like, that Quins was the other team I was going to mention. Like, I think Quins are better coached now than they were before. This thing of, like, you know, okay, we've got a Bath scrum half this day, a Bristol scrum half the next day. It's Leicester, and it'll be Mitchell in the Six Nations from 4 different clubs. And then 10 is settled. Centre, as you said, there's a lot of outside talent at centre. That'll happen. Like, that's one of the biggest misnomers in rugby is some teams are just bad at producing a position. No team is able to produce all 15 positions. There's no one in any code. It just doesn't happen. Everyone has their gaps. But I just think there is that cohesion element. I think there's a coaching element. And if I was to have a concern about England, I don't really give fiddlers fuck about how England fare, and I don't care if they don't improve. I do think they look poorly coached at times. And I think centre is the epitome of that, and their defence is the epitome of that, because they can still attack, they can still win collisions, they can still line out and scrum and do all those bits, and their ruck work is generally fairly decent. But when it comes to phase 4 and 5 in defence, or phase 4 and 5 in attack, outside of individual brilliance, when do they usually produce something? Do you know? And that's, to me, is a coaching thing. Yes, they're pulling against each other, but I think it's coaching. And the fact that Felix Jones has left the building for we don't know what reason, it's like, I don't want to say Steve Wardwick is
Two
Eddie
other
Jones.
coaches also left.
Yeah, like he's not the only, and he won't be the last. Like, if we're being honest here, he won't be that. Wigglesworth won't leave because they're good mates, but and like it just seems all over the shop. I think they're getting by on talent, and especially pack talent. And if I was to say to England tomorrow, what are you going to do for 2025? Go through that pack, because they've got a good pack. Like, they genuinely do. They will have 6 Lions out of the pack. Probably.
Like I say, Marcus Smith isn't at all the problem. He's the thing that's going right for them. But
he's had his best year for England this year, I think. It's
yeah, 100%. He's playing extremely well and really silenced me for all the things I wanted to say about
all that matters.
But you say they've got the pack talent and play to the pack. If they're going to play a pack orientated game, is Marcus Smith the player for that? Because he's not a pack orientated 10. He is looking to use his back line all the time. And like you said, they don't have the talent in the backs. They just don't. Anyway, moving on from that now onto the next game, because we are on the clock, believe it or not. Ben, Portugal versus Scotland. What do you learn from this game? Because if you look at Scotland's year so far, you've obviously had the win over England, that's customary, the tour to the Americas, where you were playing teams that, you know, you were able to put out a B team and beat by a lot. And now you've had a game against a Fijian club side, which you won easily, and now a game against Portugal. And
this makes it sound like you're saying England are the same standard as Portugal and USA.
Maybe I am saying that, but and in between you've had this game against the Springboks where you got a bit dusted. So what's your feeling as a Scotland fan when you're watching these games against teams who we love watching and we love their players but aren't competitive?
It was an odd one. I kind of, you know, you expect to win and you expect to come to win. Portugal showed up and they intended on playing. They weren't unnecessarily defensive. They had some good moments. They dominated our replacement front row, which I think we need to talk in a little bit more detail about, because I think I'm really worried about our front row at the moment, particularly at tight head after Xander Ferguson. I don't think we have anything there that's international talent. I think Elliot Miller-Mills yesterday was poor, and I think I'm being kind by saying he was poor yesterday. It was an interesting one. Josh Bayless carried well at 8. He's been in and out the last few years. Scored a good try. Aaron Reed, I saw your stats that you put online yesterday. I think he played okay. I think the
I think
stats
he tries very
maybe.
well.
I think he was still running a bit too laterally at times, looking for holes when he should have passed off. There are a couple of offloads he missed. When he cross rings towards Darcy Graham's side of the pitch, second half, that he probably should have passed to him. I think Rory Hodgson carried really well, and his offload for Josh Bayless for, I think, second or third try in the first half was good. It was a bit broken, I think, yesterday. I feel like it was a lot of players that had not played together apart from training through the week. So I think there was a lot of players in there that Patrick Harrison was misfiring a little bit, both in the scrum and with the line-outs, and our line-out is a concern at the moment. I think whoever we have in there at 2, whether it's Cherry, Johnny Matthews, Harrison, Ashman, the 4 of them don't really seem to be getting that structure right for hooking and for the line-out. It is a concern. So 2 and 3 are the major concerns to me after Ferguson. I think Locks okay, back row okay. Josh, you know, Baylor's carrying quite well. Hastings not as good as he was against Fiji. I think there was a lot of passing that seemed a little bit stunted yesterday. I think we were always going to win, but I am a little bit concerned about the depth of the squad at the moment. I think the backs are fine, but I think there's a concern over the front row and the locks. I think.
Can I ask a stupid question? Just because, like, I genuinely did not see this game. But how much did Scotland win by, and how much it was just like garbage time? Because I didn't see enough of it to know.
It's 59-21.
Yeah.
And
So
was
we were
that
20.
like convincing?
Yeah,
It
it never
wasn't
looked like
hard.
losing.
No, we never looked like losing. There was a couple of tries came off sort of fairly amateur play out the back by Portugal. Stafford McDowell's try in particular was epitomised that really kind of. It was a easily telegraphed intercept, and he's jogged in under the posts. And McDowell played quite well at 12. First time he's captain Scotland. It was good to see Freddie Douglas come on. He's never played a pro game until yesterday. He's an Edinburgh player. Hasn't played for Edinburgh yet, apart from playing for the A team with Ben Healy. And we've obviously been a bit of chat about Ben Healy today and where he's going to go and what's going to happen with him. In terms of his fronting up with Sean Everett, which I 100% support, because I don't think Everett's a good enough head coach. And if Healy wants to go to Glasgow, he will go, and I'll be happy for him to go, because he needs to. Yeah, I'm glad if it is, you know, what is said has transpired, that he's stuck up for himself and the rest of the squad.
Tom Jordan has taken the
Everett.
money and gone to Bristol.
He has, and I'm a little bit disappointed by TJ doing that. I guess
going downwards in terms of team, like, if we're being honest, like.
Well, the romantic in me would be like, well, you've just been given a Scotland cap after being in Glasgow for 3 years, and you weren't really doing much before you turned up at Glasgow. You're a bit of a journeyman and hadn't really found your place. And now he's off for the big bucks for 300 grand a year, which I get. But at the same time, I'm like, you've just got your Scotland cap and then you're looking to go. And I think a couple of Scottish sort of.
But he's been offered like kind of 300 bags. So
I know. I get it. So yeah, 9 tries yesterday. Darcy Graham obviously equalled Duhan's record. We'll see who takes the record again next weekend, or if they stay equal. Graham was pretty quiet yesterday, actually. I didn't really see him on the ball much. Portugal were good. Portugal were quite good. Marquez, the 9, scored a really good try.
I swear he retired.
Yeah, he's getting on a bit. He'll be late 30s now, I think, at least. But he did. George Horn was okay at 9 yesterday. I think it's always difficult when you play those tier 2 nations, is how professional do you remain and ensure you win the game, or do you throw caution to the wind and try things that kind of deviate from the game plan? And I felt like it was kind of a little bit of both yesterday. The first 25, 30 minutes we kept to the script, jogged into quite a comfortable lead. And then there was again that sort of 10-minute period before halftime and after halftime where we kind of just let ourselves down a bit. And then the replacement front row came on. There was a huge scrum from the Portuguese.
5 lineouts lost is a bad one.
Yeah, 69%. I mean, against tier 1 nations, 6 nations, it's not good enough. You need to be 85% and over, and Portugal were. So what, 70? Yeah.
Yeah.
Nearly a third. And again, it was just bad throws and bad calls. And it was in attacking territory. It was 2 or 3 we lost in the 22. And it's not going to matter against Portugal. Granted, Portugal fronted up yesterday. They showed up. They did play the rugby that I'm happy they did. They didn't do a Romania in the World Cup and just kind of go, yeah, walk all over us and lose 89-0, which I was worried about because no one learns from that. It doesn't pay any
They
the
lost
winner or the
they lost to
loser.
USA last week as well, so I was worried as well.
Yeah. But they showed up and I think gave Scotland a bit of a working. And maybe it does get through to the sort of second string that they need to start being a bit more thoughtful with their play because the front row it isn't up to much at the moment. Outside of Ferguson, Schumann, I'm a bit concerned.
Yeah,
And I
when Portugal
don't see anyone coming through at the moment. I think it's a bit like English centres. I think we could say the same with the Scottish front row. It's a bit of a concern, especially at hooker. Hooker's the big concern for me.
Johnny Matthews
Yeah.
got handed off by Storty, didn't he?
Johnny Matthews was terrible when he came on yesterday, and I don't think he'd be afraid of admitting that himself. The camera panned to him at full time, and saw him mouth "F in hell." And I'm not going to do Caleb. I can't swear as much as you can on a podcast. But I think he was quite resigned. He was like, because he got called in quite late because obviously injuries, suspension. And he missed an opportunity yesterday to kind of put his marker down and go, I'm worthy being called up because Townsend's not looked at him at all since that Romania game from memory. And he didn't really do much at all. Being handed off by a back. George Horn being handed off by Marquez and going under the posts, that was pretty amateurish as well. I don't want to be too sort of beaten down on Scotland because it's kind of a Scottish thing to do is to be negative, even though you've won, and be dour and sort of like despondent. But I still think we've got the nucleus of a strong side there, but a couple of injuries, whether it's in the front row or at 4 and 5, or Darge or Dempsey being injured, I think because Hamish Watson's, I don't think he's going to come back into the setup. Jamie Ritchie's kind of not over the hill, but he's certainly kind of less sort of he's more dispensable than he was as well, I think. So that sort of Darge Dempsey kind of access at the back row and Ferguson with Matt Ferguson and then Xander in the front row. I just worry about 1, 2, 4 and 5. I just don't think there's a strength there at the moment, and it's something that we need to work on. Freddie Douglas could be the answer at 5. Again, if he's good enough now, just chuck him straight in with the Six Nations. I have no issue with blooding him in the Six Nations next year. There's a lot of chat about him, youngest ever debutant since 1960 something, I think. And there was a very nice photograph yesterday of the most recent youngest debutant, which was he's now probably well into his 70s now, and he was sort of. There's a photograph of the term at the end, 60-year age gap, whatever it might be. But if Freddie Douglas is ready, then the SRU needs to be on the phone to Sean Everett and go start blooding him in that sort of gap now between the 6-8 weeks in that block with the Challenge Cup games coming up, and then blood him for the end of January, start of February. Just get him involved because he came on yesterday. I think he had seven tackles in 5 minutes when he came on yesterday. He was putting himself about, and with Scott Cummins and Grant Gilchrist being that sort of first choice lock pair, Grant Gilchrist is getting old now. I don't think he's going to be World Cup player. I think he'll be too old by the time of the next World Cup. And Scott Cummins, he's good, but he's not a leader in that pack at the moment. I don't think. I think Gilchrist is kind of seen as a sort of the senior, kind of more mature character. Captains Edinburgh on occasion, leads the sort of the second row there. But if Freddie Douglas is ready, just go get him involved, start him against Australia next weekend. I'd love to see him play more because I think he's ready. He looked ready yesterday, put himself about, wasn't overwhelmed by the occasion, and played really, really well. So, yeah, it's nice to see that there is a ready-made replacement, and hopefully we'll see him go from strength to strength and get some more game time because he was very good.
Alan, any thoughts on this game? Did you see much of it?
I did watch the game. I like Portugal. I think they did well in the last World Cup, but something I think World Rugby probably need to look at this whole setup and stuff like that and see, because the odd Georgia game against Italy gets pretty close. But Scotland, I agree with Ben. Scotland are where they are, and they might be a lot more willing to blood players in the Six Nations. But I like the team, but the issues are exactly what Ben says. So there's not really too much to take to disagree with what he said there.
We've got an opportunity to win the Six Nations next year. I think. I think it's. I can see Kalen raising his eyebrows, but I'm going to put it out there. I think we've got an opportunity next year. The way our home games are are built. Ireland, Wales, and Italy at home. We've got a very good record against England. We've only lost to them twice in the last 9 years. I think there's
Scotland
an
could beat
opportunity there
anyone
for
on
us.
their day.
But we have to do it 5 games in a row, or
Yes,
four, at
that's the
least 4
problem,
games in a row.
isn't it?
We look at the season. We won the first 2 games in the Six Nations for the first time in probably at least a decade, and then that game against France. If that try was given, it wasn't given, probably should have been given, and then you maybe the rest of the campaign takes a different complexion. We go away to Italy, bit of a dour result against Ireland. We fronted up, but we were never going to win that game. But I still think we've got an opportunity there. But it hinges on the front row being the first choice front row being fit. And it has to be Schumann and it has to be Sander Fegs. And I'm just not sure who the first choice hooker is at the moment. I don't think Townsend knows either. I think there's a few options there, but not one of them have really stood up yet and went, this is the number 2 shirt is mine and I'm keeping it.
The big concern, and like I'm not trying to take the piss in this particular instance, but we spoke about it last week with Ireland that like you can't get away with a bad line out at test level anymore. And like, look, Scotland would probably clean it up because vast majority of teams do over a period of time. But if it's still there come the Six Nations, it's hard to see them improving on where they were. That's
the Edinburgh lineup is the Scotland lineup because we have Edinburgh hookers at 2 at the moment. That's how it's been for a while. It's Ashman. Johnny Matthews isn't preferred by Townsend. It's been pretty obvious. And he obviously got his opportunity yesterday, didn't take it, but it's been Ashman or it's been Harrison or it's been Dave Cherry until he had his fall down the stairs, which we talked about before. Who knows why that happened? We all know what happened. And beyond that, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there. So it is a concern. And I do worry about our lineup, especially we seem it goes in the attack in 22. And I'd say most of those lineups lost yesterday against the head would have been in the 22. I remember at least 2 or 3 that Harrison threw that were easily intercepted. They weren't that sort of like bobbly one where they kind of just like get the Portuguese lot was up there well before our lot was and read it. It's something we've got to work on because the game against, I know we're going to the previews at some point, but I know the game against Australia takes on a huge complexion now because Australia have won.
Yeah, massive game. We'll preview that in a minute. But moving on now to the Italy game, so if people haven't seen this, because it was quite under the radar because it, obviously English, neither team was an English language nation, so there wasn't that much chat about it in all the places. But for people who haven't seen, Georgia came to Italy and were 17-3 up at one point, 17-6 up at one point in the first half. If no one has seen Georgia's tries, definitely go and watch them because the first one was great, like set move, second phase, I think it was move, where they were streaming through. I think there was about 4 players could have scored. Tabit Sadze, the winger, dotted it down. He's got 40 tries in 45 tests for Georgia. Unbelievable winger, also wears a scrum cap, something about them. And then for the second try, Niniashvili runs past about 40 men and half of Eastern Europe, does a lap around the Alps, comes back down, runs past them all again, and gives it to, I want to say Lobson Dietze, probably got that wrong, and he dots it down. So Italy were massively in a hole in this game. And then Caelan, in the second half, they managed to get themselves out of trouble.
Which is very convenient because I only flicked on just after halftime because I was watching another sport. But yeah, no, look, I kind of fall between 2 stools. At the time when it finished, I was like, that's a big result for Italy because they needed, like, they grounded out. Sorry, I'm going to close that window because you probably can hear that. Sorry, there's just a horn going off in the background, a car horn. So for Italy to grind it out is a massive result. The only thing is, and maybe this is just my cynicism kicking in on Sunday evening, they've beaten Wales and Scotland this year. And it's like, how much credit can you give them for beating Georgia at home?
They lost to Samoa in the summer. They lost to Samoa in the summer.
But yeah, no, like and like as we mentioned, is Italy's form affected by Benetton's form? Probably. Like that's probably a factor too. And it's a good result, but it's also like, yeah, I just don't know how to feel about it. Like, fair play to them. They really came back into that game. They really bounced back into it, like especially in that second half. I know you're not Garbisi's biggest fan. I thought Garbisi did well in that second half. And like I'm not biggest fan either, but I think he did well in that second half. Thought the centers played well. But I just don't know. I just don't know how to feel about it, is the thing. I'm like in 2 minds about, well, look, Georgia is still a good team and they've got one of the best, fullbacks in the world in Niniashvili. I think I've said that wrong.
Yeah, Nini
Uh,
Ashford. No, I fully agree. He is
He's unreal.
unbelievable.
He's
He's
going to
only
La Rochelle next year.
22. I thought he
Yeah.
was like 28. He's 22.
Yeah, he made his
Which
debut
club?
at
Where's
like
his club?
19. I feel like
He's-
he made his debut against Ireland.
He plays for Lyon currently. He's
Mhm.
rumored he's linked with La
La
Rochelle.
Rochelle. Yeah, which is fun. But for Italy, yeah, I don't know, I'm just in too much. I feel like we do need to see a big Six Nations from Italy, and we say this every year. We did just see it, but
They need to back
because
it
their
up.
form has come down, it feels like they need to do it again next year just to remind everyone it wasn't a blip or it wasn't,
If Georgia had beaten them, do you think that opens up that conversation again of having promotion and relegation playoffs?
We probably need to have this
No,
conversation as a
have to go
podcast
7.
closer
We
to
can't
the
do
Six
promotion
Nations
relegation. It
stuff.
has to be 7 or 8. I don't agree with promotion relegation.
It's a whole podcast unto itself, and
Yeah.
it's more than just a quality conversation. There's way more to it. But yes, if they had beaten them, it would have been a huge thing. They kept referring to it on commentary. They said, "Yeah, we've got to get them in," especially when they were winning. They were like, "These are amazing. We need to get them into the Six Nations." I think the only thing that I want to say on it, because like I said, it's a massive conversation. We don't have time to get into it. But the one thing that I would say is a lot of people are like, World Rugby needs to do something about it. And World Rugby have got no control over the Six Nations whatsoever. It's a private entity. It's owned by the unions and CBC. There is no obligation for the Six Nations to care about anybody other than the owners of that business, essentially. But yeah, Ben, any extra thoughts on Italy on this one? So
Yeah, I think there was a lot of concerted pressure that resulted in that penalty try, and I think once that penalty try was given by Ben O'Keefe, which I think was probably the right decision in consult with the TMO. It was one of those where the Georgian players looked to sort of lift it up, but it's the winger's going to catch that and stroll in, isn't he? And it had to be given. Then Georgia go down to 14, and there's only really one winner from that point. Georgia didn't score a point in the second half, did they? 17-6 up at half time.
no, didn't score a point in the second half.
Yeah, I think long term Italy. If Benetton starts to play better, early, or start playing better in the Six Nations. I think that's how it is at the moment. Yeah, nice to play in a football stadium again. I love my stadiums, and it was in Genoa Stadium where Sampdoria and Genoa stadium share. I've been to Genoa before. It's one of those stadiums that's smack bang in the middle of the city, with like in the middle of a housing estate or house development, and it's just quite nice. I think other nations could learn from this and go and just play in other stadiums just when you have the opportunity to do so, because Italy need to kind of spread their brand of rugby and go into other cities, whether it's with Udine last week and Genoa now, and obviously those two cities are quite far apart. So go to the northwest of Italy and the northeast of Italy.
They're in Juventus Stadium next week,
so they'll be in Turin next week. Yeah, so that'd be pretty cool against New Zealand, isn't it? Is All Blacks they play next weekend, Saturday night?
Yeah,
I think.
and Zebra being sold as well is kind of like the backdrop there, because if
They
feel like one of these cities could be the one,
Powerhouse.
Has
Genoa
it been sold? I haven't heard that.
for Jerry
Chat today.
Post on
FIR
Twitter if you
said
want to go
something
check
said
it out.
about it, wasn't there? Yeah. And yeah, I just like they're going out to the stadiums, and I think there's an argument.
Sorry to any Italian listeners who are hoping us to cover that in detail. I didn't know, so
I did, so I probably should have brought it up, to be fair. But
okay, I need to read into that.
Those stadium moves, I think Ireland could play. England could play another stadium.
Ireland can't because of their lease agreement with Aviva, but they should. They should. I fundamentally believe games should be moved around. Scotland is obviously a little bit different. The same with Wales. The fact that England don't has always baffled me, because they could do one game in the north every year. Newcastle, Manchester,
St. James's,
Liverpool, anywhere really. Even some of the championship stadiums would be grand, but it's just annoying that they don't.
Rugby's very regional in England. France is a bit weird having their big stadium. Obviously, they don't struggle for tickets, do they? But France having their big stadium in Paris, where the Mediterranean and Atlantic coast are the hotbeds of rugby in France.
Well, the only two teams above in the north are in Paris. That's it. And after that's La Rochelle, and everyone else is in the southwest and south and the Côte d'Azur region. It's incredible, the split.
Apart from Vaughan are the first team.
They're obviously northwest.
Can I say one thing about France, New Zealand? Just one. The pre-game spectacle.
Yeah,
lads.
France know how to film a rugby match.
They know how to do it.
BL Barry's pace as well. I'd like to give that a quick mention.
That
was unbelievable.
The game as a rule, because it was an unbelievable game of rugby, in my opinion. I actually thought England South Africa was probably better in hindsight, but I kind of got caught up in the emotion of France New Zealand because I love French rugby.
Yeah.
But the lights, the dimming, the spotlights, like the red, white, and blue that they have going around the top of the Stade de France,
Yeah,
which
beautiful.
I love that anyway at the best of times. It was just so well done. And like we're at the midst of talking about like atmosphere here in Ireland. It comes up every time the rugby team plays. You turn on Murrayfield for a game against Portugal, where you're going to have a lot of first time fans and things like that. And, you know, it's at 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock on a Saturday, and they're belting out Flower Scotland. And you go to Wales today, and Cardiff is not full, and Welsh rugby's in not a great place. We'll talk about that in a minute. And they're belting out the national anthem, which, forgive me, I don't know the name, but and it's the same everywhere. Even Twickenham gets loud for God Save the King and so on. And then you go to Dublin, and it's like we're playing like Free From Desire 2 minutes before kickoff on a Friday night, and like the national anthem is being sung like a fucking reluctant secondary school students who don't want to be there. And I don't want to use the word embarrassed in case I have to dial it back because that might be too strong. But it is a sense of embarrassment for me. Like when I tune in to the Marseillaise in Paris with the lights and the dimming and like the players belting it out. And like it cut to one player, I can't remember who it was, like full chest and everything, just belting out the national anthem. And I get a sense of regret that we never get that in Dublin. Like ever. Like the fans, the players. And look, it's a player's prerogative if they want to sing. Like some guys just aren't political.
It's
when it
weird
comes to
though,
things
isn't
like
it?
that.
Because your traveling support is like the
It's
opposite.
because the traveling support is rugby fans, and the fans at the game aren't necessarily rugby fans. Is the massive difference. The World Cup was phenomenal for it. Like I knew of so many stories of people who'd be like club players who did the 4 games of the pools and things like that, and they've gone to other games, and they are the rugby hotbed in Ireland. But you go to like the Aviva Stadium on a Friday night, and it's, you know, like I've seen 2 or 3 influencers having things up at the game. Look, sell the game whatever way. Like I understand there's a balance to be struck, but like even just something like we played a song. I can't remember what song it was. I think it was Free From Desire. I'm not sure. Literally just after the anthems, before the teams kick off. Like you don't need that anywhere else. And I get such a sense of regret about it. I just, you know, and it's annoying because I don't like to be that person bringing it up. But like I'm envious of obviously France, because like you could do that on Broadway and they'd be impressed. But like Murrayfield and Cardiff and Pretoria and Auckland and everywhere else, literally everywhere.
My only thing on the France game is that the hacker has got bites to it these days at the moment. It was quite vanilla for a little bit, I think, and these days they've changed it up and it's really working for me. Alan, did you have anything to add on Italy, Georgia?
No, I didn't get to watch the game. I got to watch the last like 10 minutes or so, but no, I don't really have too much to say about it, to be honest.
Well, that can only mean one thing. Where's my sausages?
How many have you got? 11 sausages left.
I've got 5 left.
There's yeah, because you should eat a sausage for every game.
Literally talk about anything apart from Wales. That's the part we're on at this stage.
Right.
Can I just say one thing? Cam Winnett's attempt to tackle Mikitao. That was
make a business decision, man. Make a business decision. Game's lost.
Yeah, but that's embarrassing though. Just look lost the entire game. They look like they trained all week. That's how bad it was.
There's a good couple of players who I could say they had a bad game, or then they've been in poor form and things. But honestly, it's not about players. I was quite disappointed with Sam Warburton and Dan Biggar after the game. Were like, well, the reason they basically said, "Oh, the reason that Wales are doing bad is because they got rubbish players," and I'm like, you'd think former Welsh players, especially like Dan Biggar, someone who literally wrote a book about how much he got abused, would stick up for current players when they're losing. Now, I know neither Sam Warburton nor Dan Biggar ever lost 11 test matches in a row, but I was surprised. And you know, when Sam Warburton's saying, like, you have to remember that Sam Warburton's like the son of Gatland. Like, he owes Gatland everything. And for him to say, like, oh, a new coach wouldn't change this. Like, well, wouldn't it? Like, it's getting worse constantly.
It's a stale environment, is the sense that and like, look, I'm not on the ground. I'm not in Wales. I haven't been to a Wales game, but there's just a bang of staleness. And that stat about Wales's last 2 games where there was 20-minute red cards and they've conceded
21-0
six
today when
tries.
It
Karevi
was
went off.
21-0 today whilst upper man, and it was 18-0
Yeah.
last week whilst upper man.
That's something deeper than
It
just
has
the
zero
players.
impact on any of their game. It's just like it just continues as normal. It's ridiculous,
But I think if Anthony Neely gets worse, and maybe not, like maybe that's just us putting numbers to something and trying to make a solution. But like, I don't know. I just think it speaks to a staleness. Like, ultimately, I'm an Irish voice and this, not a Welsh voice, and your opinion on it trumps everything for me. I think Gatland just has to go. Like I really do. Now I think a lot of people at the WRU have to go. Like I have followed it close enough to know that. And again, that's your remit. Rap Pod will cover it better than I ever could. But I just think because Gatland, with his salary, with his history, with what we know he's like as a person, like he is tetchy. He gets that emotional side. We haven't seen it. Like we haven't seen the progression since the World Cup. They've gone backwards massively.
resigned
Like I actually thought the World Cup was
then.
really positive for Wales until the
should
second
beat
half of the Argentina
Argentina.
game. Should have beaten them. Should have
Yeah.
beaten them. Like until the second half of that game.
We should have lost to Fiji as well.
Well, yeah, that's the other side of it as well. But like, I don't know. I'm disappointed. Like obviously knowing the likes of yourselves, like really good regional fans who are very different to say just the general rugby fan in Wales. I just something has to change. You just can't keep going at this rate. Something has to change, really.
Yeah, it's the whole when the pain of doing the same thing gets worse than the fear of change. And there were people saying like, "Oh, there's no alternative to Gatland." I'm like, oh, eventually, there's going to come a point where there's no old. It's anything becomes better. And you talk about the WRU, and like I say, probably more than we can talk about on this pod, but. The thing with WRU is we changed all the people at the WRU a year and a half ago, and we've got all the same problems. So if we change them all again, then
Won't change that then.
I just don't believe that it'll
I don't
change
think it
anything.
necessarily helps when you have like players in the press, ex-players. There's snipes. There's snipes after the interviews. There's snipes before the game. There's snipes in the press. There's snipes from the coach to ex-players, and like you just said, ex-players as well. Again, it doesn't feel very cohesive. What interests me is that they had a game plan during the World Cup, which was this kick, chase, defend game plan. With the new rules regarding, they had scrum, they had line out. So with these new rules where you can't block kickers and stuff anymore, the amount of teams who were turning over balls from kick chase and why I don't understand why Wales aren't trying to utilize that a little bit more at this point and just
size.
round the wagons and just start there and then go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Tom Rogers was very good in this game. So he came in. So he's the Scarlets. Everyone says that his future is as a fullback, but he always ends up being on the wing because of wing options. And he was very, very good. And he early in the first half, you could see like he was getting close to the box kicks, and he was. And I actually tweeted from the Scarlets account. Oh, if you half a second earlier, and he's getting these, and then towards the end of the first half, he started getting them, and in the beginning of the second half, he started getting them, and then he got taken off. Now, there was a moment with Tom and Anscombe where Anscombe is on the attack and he gets bundled into touch, and he lands on the deck and he has a big go at Tom Rogers, and then both of them get hooked at the same time. So I don't know what's gone on there, whether it's just a coincidence or what, but that was odd. And the weird thing is that Grady is the player that Tom Rogers replaced. Two players couldn't be more different for players who play in the same position, completely opposite ends of the winger spectrum. So it's like, and then it goes back to like the Australia selections of during the summer. By the way, we toured Australia in the summer and performed better than this. We're facing the same opponents an amount of time. They've had a lot more games in between then and now than us, which is a wider point about how the rugby calendar advantages the Southern Hemisphere so much. But the progress that they've made compared to us is jaw-dropping.
They're the winners of the autumn test so far, Australia, definitely. I think they're the team that will, they could beat us next weekend.
I agree. I think
give Ireland a game as well. They
to use Lee's phrase,
about the lines next year.
They're going to give someone a bloody nose. One of the next 2 weeks, at the very least.
I mean, we are talking
We've
about
only
an
done two.
Australian team. They're not exactly known for their physicality, are they? And
Well,
they look like
Scrum struggled.
absolute powerhouses.
They're athletic. I
They're
think it's they're
athletic, but they're
naturally
not
athletic.
like
Yeah.
they're not Dwayne Vermeulen. Do you know what I
No.
mean? Running around just barreling into people, and yet they look.
Valentini was brilliant
Yeah,
today, though.
he is good, but I mean, again, going into contact. There was one point where I don't know who it was got the ball, and when it just kind of stood off,
Zikitau.
you know,
Yeah.
Ikitau, and it's like
He's in great form as well.
you can't
Yeah.
leave these guys to just
But he
stand.
was
You have
he
to.
was always in control of that situation though. Like he could have done what he wanted. There was no pressure on him.
Zikitau was almost laughing, doubling down. That's how
The
how humiliating it would have been for win it, I think.
I do think, just to talk about Australia, I think Joe Schmidt deserves a bit of credit because I think he has learned lessons from the TRC for himself as well. Because I think there was a minute where he was trying to turn Australia into Ireland, and it
There's
didn't
still
really work.
there's still callbacks. When I watched
Yeah.
Australia today, and I seen some of the England game, there's still callbacks. I still think how he sets the team up is not it's not necessarily the exact same, but I think there's some similarities. But as much as everything else, like there's probably an element that he knows how to beat teams like Wales. And I know that sounds so stupid. He knows how to beat Northernminster
And
teams.
Australia know how to beat Wales. And I think, but what I was going to say is that now Schmidt in this autumn, and it's only been 2 games, but he seems to have let them be a bit more Australian. So that's why you're seeing more offloads, which traditionally Schmidt doesn't like offloads, or taking on one-on-ones and things. Because that's the one thing that you can say for Super Rugby is it produces players who are very, very, very good in one-on-one situations. So he's allowing them to do that a bit more. So I think credit has to go to Joe for adapting in that sense.
And he's just a wonderful coach in that situation, like in terms of getting guys to play to their strengths. It's one of his things. Like he managed to make like random players who you might even remember, like Dave Carney, Chris Henry, like Geordie Murphy, into like really important players for Ireland when they got their run in the team. Because he will see a strength in a player and bring it out in them. And I think, like, again, I've talked a lot about centres this evening. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I don't have one eye on games. Again, the centres is like a prime example of that. Ikitau has just been in great form. How he didn't go to the World Cup, like
but that
pure
World
Eddie
Cup
Jones
selection was a joke. I mean, Hooper and Quade Cooper would have really helped him out, I think.
Oh, Michael Hooper would have changed everything. Do you know, like even just from not on the field, but off the field, he would have changed so much.
But a coach who's just not
coup, isn't he, as well? So
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how he develops.
a coach
Do you
who's
get
just
many
not
minutes?
changed
I
at all
turned off at
is
that stage.
He got about 50. He came on after the Krevy 20-minute red card. So he would have replaced Krevy, but it was either him or Donaldson. But they brought Suri on after about 65, 68 minutes because Krevy went off 50th minute, I think, and it was confirmed as a red. I think 58.
He could have picked up a couple of yellows though. There was a couple of league legacies in a couple of his tackles. But the one coach who's not adapted or been flexible at all is Warren Gatland. We're playing proper 2015 Gatland Warren ball. The attack for most of the game was everything off 9, which is fine. It works. It's a way of playing. Then Costello, because it's obviously everyone knows Sam is my favorite player, and to see him put in those situations where he's in a team that's losing, 20 points down, no confidence, he's playing with something like his 5th or 6th different scrum half in a Wales jersey in front of him. And Eddie James is another example, just players not being put in scenarios where they're set up to succeed. And being, Wales fly half, he's going to get blamed for.
Can I just add something to that, Hugh? Because for so many years we heard about like how, well, number one, it didn't matter what the regions were doing because they went into Wales camp and they grew. I think it's now full circle entirely in terms of, it's gone the other way in that
they're regressing when they go to camp.
Going from Wales, they're leaving Welsh camp feeling worse than they are at the regions. And like you take Sam Costello as a great example because the Scarlets were just starting to hit form. And now Wales have this really poor window where if they lay a finger on South Africa next week, I think people will be happy. Didn't really lay much of a glove on Australia in the second half, to be fair. Like first half, they came back into it. And it's now gone the other direction. And I do feel for the players because I do think there's an element of they need something different. Do you know what I mean? Like I was fonder on the PVAC era than other people, but I was not close to following. I wasn't following rugby the same degree that I am now.
It was never like this on the PVAC. It was never like this.
It was never like that. It was literally never 11 losses in a row. And I I don't share your frustration. I don't know what it's like to be in this position, but like it is very tough for everyone,
Yeah.
and nothing is going to change short term is the thing.
It needs to be coaching at all levels, though. It's not, we
Yeah.
can't just be all about Team Wales anymore. It needs to be everything beneath. That's how we got in this situation, is everything was about Team Wales. And, like I said last week that Gatland will go when the attendance is dipped. 56,000 in the stadium today, which is
About
AKA,
30,000 at the 70th minute, wasn't there? There's a lot of people
AKA,
walked out.
AKA 20,000 empty seats.
Yeah.
And that's money. Like if you talk 50 quid a ticket, that combined with 10,000 empty seats last week, that's a million and a half already not there. Plus the fact we're only playing 3 games, we normally play 4. So there's another however many million that's not come through. It's but about the coaching is, yes, the national team probably needs a new coach, but all beneath it, the coaching in Wales is such a low standard. And when we talk about costs being cut, that's where the costs are being cut, because everyone talks about the players' salaries. That's where all the money's going. That's the number one expenditure, is players' salaries. The costs are being cut on facilities, professionalism, coaches, assistant coaches, strength and conditioning, sports science, medical side of it, conditioning, supplements, all the way down. That's where the money's being cut. The players' wages are the last thing that is being cut. Obviously it is being cut, but it's not like that's being sacrificed in the name of something else. Just everything has been sacrificed, and now that's the only thing left that wasn't being sacrificed that now is being sacrificed. So it's such a deep situation. But yeah,
If they want to change things in the dressing room, obviously Toby Booth's name is going to be mentioned because Toby Booth had such a strong cultural impact.
no, it won't
There's
work.
another coach.
He wouldn't work.
He wouldn't. I don't think he'd go for it anyway because he knows the union.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing. A lot of people are going to be fearful at the
Poison
moment
chalice.
because
Yeah.
it's a bit of a poison chalice.
You need someone who's like Welsher than Welsh, someone who would never turn
Yeah.
down the job.
Yeah, there's that. Or there's someone who might be like English who will just tap into the passion and be there for 2 years, even if it's just 2 years, just to get them out of a rut. Someone who kind of gets Welsh rugby from that perspective. Not to say Graham Roundtree would go for it, but like someone like him, Toby Booth, someone who get the cultural side, just get a bit of a lift. Anything. Like what the World Cup was until the second half against Argentina. Some bit of a lift that just can release that pressure valve a tiny bit. Because I think, like as we kind of said, it's so hard for the players now. It's gone to the point where it is so hard for them to perform. Because it's just like, you don't want to be the team that's lost 11 games in a row.
But on a positive note, it's our third interpod game that I've played, and we never ever we never finish teams off. So there is that to look at here, the Springboks. We don't ever finish teams off. It's always like, oh, could have done a lot better. So
let's get into previews for next week then. So the one thing I'll say is it's very unusual for teams at test level to concede 40, 50 2 weeks in a row. So I can see Wales coming out of the South Africa game with some kind of level of respectability, and then all the hipsters will say, I can see what they're trying to do. Yeah, but if you have a consistent team selection with 3 games in a row, you're going to look better in the final game than you did in the first game. That's just how time works. So I don't like imagine Wales somehow win, right?
That'd be so funny.
So what? So what? Like,
well, I'm going to the game, so I hope not.
Yeah, but so what does that mean? If Wales somehow win, does that mean everything's fixed? Does that
means
mean
our YouTube comments are going to be so much fun next week?
Be a lot of meowing going on.
But I think the most interesting aspect of that game, there's a lot of meowing, yes. I'm sorry, you've got me thinking about something else now. I'll tell you off air.
Go on.
The most interesting part of this Wales South Africa game for me is what team South Africa are going to pick. So, Alan, who do you want to see?
I'd like to see the same team that played this weekend. Maybe a couple of wings or something get rested, but I'd like to see the back line that we had in this last game. So, Mani Lebak, I'd like to see the team: Colby, Arnser, Fassi. I know he wants to get Willie Leroux to 100 tests, so Willie Leroux might play. he might mix a team together. But I do believe that he'll want to try and put Wales to the sword, and I think Manie Libbok will start. I would keep faith with him for the moment. But I think Willie Leroux might start. That's probably about. I mean, he might go with 3 backs. I don't even know what he's going to do. I could just surmise. You know what I mean? He's got 2 squads. I don't know. I mean, Malcolm Mark starts on the bench. I don't think many teams would start him on the bench, and then he comes on and he messes all his lineouts up. So it's like, okay, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But I do believe Willie Leroux will probably play to get up to 99 tests. And I think that Libbok will probably start because this is a bit of a confidence. Well, you'd like to think it's a confidence booster for him. So those are probably the 2 that I would expect to see. That's probably about it, really. I don't know. The others are all interchangeable, aren't they? So,
yeah. Anybody got a margin in mind for that one?
No, it won't be what it was today.
I think it could, though. That's because, in fairness, like, we can't act like these 2 teams haven't played each other in the last 2 years, because they have, and South Africa won them pretty not steamrolled, but pretty convincingly. So that's definitely a factor. They'll have a familiarity factor. Now that works both ways. I understand that, but yeah, I think South Africa. The only thing is, if South Africa heavily rotate, I think South Africa will, because they're naming their team Tuesday. I feel like that team's as good as named, because we know what Razzie's like. I think their team's as good as named, so I think that's really interesting to see what way they go. But I think South Africa will win. What was it today? 30 points?
32, wasn't it? 52.
52.
So yeah, maybe 3-4 scores, 25, 30 points, give or take. I think
I'll go for 12.
I would love to see Wales put it up to them.
12
points.
I think
needs it.
Yeah.
Al's going conservative.
Yeah.
Well, we never put teams to the so they're all going to be knackered, and I don't know, the crowd get into it. That you got that go.
The score, the box always beat you by more than the scoreline says, if that makes sense.
Your body will tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. The Ireland versus Fiji. Again, same kind of question, Kaylin. What are you expecting from selection?
I knew you were going to ask this, so I got up my 23 that I named for Ball-Side this week. So I just said, "Fuck it, I just go off that." So I have Dave Heffernan as one of the kind of players come in. Cian Healy, because if he's to break the test record, it would be nice to see him lead out Ireland and start. So I've him and Heffernan. I had Ryan Baird, and now I realise he will be ruled out. Keane Prendergast I have in there. I've Casey and Frawley. I've Stockdale, Nash, and Osborne, and then Izuchukwu on the bench. I don't think it's too unreasonable, but I do think Farrell's comments, and some people may not have read them, but his comments do seem like, players in the outside of the squad don't deserve to get a game. We can't just throw in everyone. So I think we will see the likes of, I think Caelan Doris plays. I think Porter plays regardless in some capacity. If Furlong's back, he plays in some capacity. I think either Gibson, Park, or Murray has to play because we don't have another night, so one of them's going to be there. I think we'll see. I have Henshaw, McCluskey. I think we'll see Henshaw go again because that gives you a chance to rest Ringrose and to get in another 12 and, and so forth. And I think we probably see either. I think we see Lowe start. I think we see Byrne probably involved. It's just a weird one because, I want to see Ireland rotate. But my point has never been to treat rugby like the barbarians. And if I came across differently at the start of the show, I do apologise. I'm not saying that. I just think Ireland should have rotated more across the last 2 to 3 years and blooded a couple more players. 6 or 7 more, that's all. So I don't want to see wholesale changes, but I would like to see Izuchukwu and maybe Gus McCarthy get their debuts. I would love to see Alex Candellen get his debut, but I have no reason to believe that he's still with the squad because he was only in the training panel. Jack Boyle, potentially, but Cian Healy plays, and I won't leave Andrew Porter out of the squad because I think it's too risky. So a couple of debutants, a couple of changes. I'd love to see Stockdale get a run. We mentioned him here on this show when we were just URC, and he was in great form. I'd love to see him get a go, but I think it's going to be a sticky one. I'll be there if I can at all. I'll try and get a little bit of content for rap because it can be tricky with the booming PA. The PA system is right above the media box, so it's really hard to get anything in the Aviva. But I'll try and get something for you. But no, I think it'll be a sticky one. I think Ireland won't rotate heavily, or at least as much as people want. but I think they will get the job done.
For people who don't know, Fiji beat Spain this weekend. It was 33-19, I want to say, where
I've been
Spain were
trails.
yeah, Spain were leading early on, but it was 5 tries to 1. So it was Fiji blew them away second half. Does anybody see anything other than a comfortable Ireland win?
I don't think it'll be that comfortable. I think it'll be Ireland by
2 scores, I think.
10 points is kind of what I'm thinking. I haven't seen the bookies spread yet, so I don't know. But I think maybe around 10 points. I think they'll just do enough. But again, need a response.
Italy, New Zealand. What kind of what are
I
we
think New
expecting
Zealand
from this game?
rotate and New Zealand win by about 30.
Heavily rotated New Zealand, 50 points.
Last game of the year for them.
Yeah.
You think it'll be
that's the
50,
thing.
Alan?
I reckon New Zealand will get 50 points easily, yeah.
They might score 50. They just might concede 10.
I mean, they'll
20.
concede a few.
Italy are looking to me like a team that's learning a new system, and they're just like focus on the system, and all the players are like remember what we were told to do. And maybe that's kind of another downside of having such a heavy Benetton influence on the squad is they're all like, is it the Benetton move or the Italy move that we're supposed to be doing? And I'm not saying they're all stood there gormless, but if you have like that half a second of hesitation, maybe that's explaining why they're looking like less good than they did in the Six Nations. But yeah, I'm not sure if New Zealand will rotate because it is the last game of the year, but you never know. I can see DMAC getting a start, for example. But yeah, I agree. I think it should be comfortable for New Zealand. Haven't
Didn't
seen anything
Park get hurt last night?
they can take.
Or am I forgetting?
I think Geordie got hurt. Did he get hurt?
I think so, yeah.
He's been excellent. I think he's gotten a lot of stick, Geordie Barrett, from New Zealand fans and Southern Hemisphere fans. I think he's been great this year. I think he's been one of their best players. But anyway, and then Ben, the unquestionable big game of the weekend is Scotland versus Australia.
Yeah.
You got to be
we'll
nervous.
go back to it. I am nervous because there's 2 things. I'm not sure who's going to replace Dempsey at the back at 8. I think it's without him, it's difficult. I don't know who's going to play 9. I just don't think the scrum halves have been again on form. George Horn was okay yesterday. Dobie came on, was okay. Ben White, we've had this conversation, isn't starting for too long at the moment, so came a little bit rusty. The big decision is going to be who plays fullback, whether it's TJ or whether he reverts to Kinghorn now that Darcy Graham and Duhan are both fit. I think that's the big decision for Tooney this week is the 11, 14 and 15 because TJ can't play on the wing, but Kinghorn can. But I don't think you can drop Darcy and I don't think you can drop Duhan. So I think it will be a toss-up between TJ and Kinghorn at 15. I'm really excited to see Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones up against Ikitau and Suolihi because it will definitely be Suolihi now starting at 13 because Crevy's going to be banned. I think he might get banned for quite a long time after what happened today. I think you could be looking at 4 or 6 weeks because it was a bad one. I thought we didn't really cover it earlier, but it was high, no attempt to dip, didn't really wrap. I think Crevy's got a bit of form for that type of rugby league tackle, so I think he's going to be out for a little while. Yeah, I think Nick White, he seems to be again another evergreen player at 9, and I think he's got the smarts, and he had the smarts over us the last time 2 years ago when Australia won a narrow game. 2021 when I went again a narrow game. We don't the games between us, apart from the battering we gave him, I think in 2017 when our old favourite commentator John Barkley and Johnny Gray were scoring for fun. I think we won 51-21 or whatever it was.
Yeah,
I think it was
you do have good
2017.
form over Australia.
We've only lost them twice. We've only lost them twice, 2015 and 2022 in the last 10, 15 years, I think. We beat them in 2013 or 2011 in the pouring rain in Newcastle, New South Wales. It was like 9-6. Greg Laidlaw was playing. It was horrible weather. It was pre-World Cup. I think it was probably 3 to 4 weeks before the World Cup started down there. But I think it'll be a clash of the centres next Sunday. I think Ikitau, Suoli up against Jones and Tuipulotu. I'm really excited to see how that unfolds.
That'll be fun.
I think it's going to be a one. It's going to be a one-score game. It's going to be a
Who's it going to be? Which way?
We're going to win by 5.
I'm going with Scotland as well, Ben. I think Scotland are going to win.
I have a feeling Australia will perform. I'm not sure if I'm confident enough to back them to win. Just because they made a lot of changes, they'll have to make a lot of changes again if they're kind of full strength. So, and like certain guys have got a lot of minutes, but I feel like they will perform.
Yeah,
I think
we managed to rest most of our players this weekend.
I think Australia are mentally in a very good place.
Yeah,
but so are we. I think at the same point. I think 12 of our 15 players are 15 are nailed on. I think our back line
Remember
is nailed on.
though, Australia still
Smith
have
has
a
a
game
great
after
record
this as well.
against Scotland as well.
Sorry,
Joe
Joe
Smith
Smith.
has a great record against Scotland. He's only lost once in all his meetings. So
That'll be 2017 Six Nations. I think.
2017, yeah, that was
When
a
Greg
very
Laidlaw
different
scored
Irish
32,
team.
26. Yeah, it was Tommy Seymour scored a couple of tries that day.
Yeah.
Greg Laidlaw nailed a penalty and beat his
I think
5'8"
Alex
chest out.
Dunbar. I could be wrong,
Yeah.
but I think Alex Dunbar scored off a shortened lineup.
He did. So he was the 12 at that point because Hugh Jones had just come into the squad in that season, and it was a very different Scotland team, and again, very different Irish team. But I think,
Not as different as you think.
Australia are in a very positive mindset now, and they've really got they're on the crest of a wave, but they've also got a game after this. So, and they haven't rotated that much.
They
Now,
rotated a bit this week, I think. They made like 6 changes this week.
okay, fair enough. So,
So
I don't know. If they win, if they beat Scotland, I don't think they'll beat Ireland.
yeah. But I think they have a better chance not a better chance of beating Ireland. I think they have a better chance of putting up a performance that makes you stand back against Ireland because of the Joe Schmidt thing. And Australia's record against Ireland is fairly decent in the last couple of meetings. And there's the Joe Schmidt factor, and there's a Will Skelton factor. Will Skelton does not lose to Irish teams historically. Now he may not be released because it's on top 14 weekend. They might be like, no, come back. But Rog could do something really funny and be like, no, play against Ireland. Which would be great. Cinema.
Okay then. Okay, lads. This has probably been a long one, so we've got to draw it to an end. If you've made it to the end, thank you, congratulations, and you've got no excuse for not subscribing.
We'll send you some hampers out.
Yeah.
Drop us your postcode.
Comment if you have made it to the end. Comment hamper underneath, and then
there we go.
Promise nothing. So
we will heart the comment.
We will heart the comment. We might even screenshot it and put it on Twitter. So. Yeah. Thank you to the Rugby ABC. Thank you to producer Lee, as always. And we shall speak to you again next week. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.